Today we're going to introduce synthetic division. Synthetic division you are going to love because now that you've done long division, synthetic division is a way to divide polynomials much faster. It's basically a shortcut to long division. Yes, you still needed to learn the long division, but after today you'll probably want to use synthetic division instead. So a couple of things you need to know before we begin. This will only work if my dividend is in descending order. If my dividend has missing terms, I'm going to fill in with zeros, and the divisor must be in the form x minus a, where a is a real number. Let's go through those three things and explain them in a little more detail. My dividend, remember, is the big polynomial that I'm going to be dividing. So here I have a polynomial. This would be an example of a dividend, and it is in descending order, right? I want to go from highest exponent all the way down to my constant. If my dividend has missing terms, I'm going to fill in with zeros. Looking at that same polynomial, do you notice how I don't have an x to the fourth? I have everything else. I have a 5, 3, 2, 1, and 0 power term, but I'm missing a fourth power term. If this happens before I can use synthetic division, I've got to replace that missing term. In long division, it totally would not matter, but in synthetic division it does. So I would fill in and put 0 x to the fourth. Now about that divisor. The divisor is what you're dividing by, right? It must be in the form x minus a. This is the only time synthetic division can actually work for us. A couple of things to know. When I'm dividing by x plus 2, that's fine. That's in that same form, x minus a. I'll talk about the difference between add and subtract in just a minute. But I can't divide by x squared plus 7 or even 3x minus 4 in synthetic division. I have to have just a plain old x or 1x and a plain old constant in my divisor. Synthetic division only uses coefficients of a problem. Okay, so in 3x squared minus 20x plus 12, notice this is in descending order and I don't have any missing terms. I have a power of 2, then 1, then 0. I'm only going to be concerned with the 3, the negative 20, and the positive 12. I'm only going to use coefficients in synthetic division. In my divisor, I'm only going to use a. So in x minus 3, remember that the format for our divisor was x minus a. So whatever's being subtracted is going to be considered a. So if I have x minus 3, I'm going to use a positive 3 because that's what's being subtracted. In x plus 2, that's the same as subtracting a negative 2. So the number that's being subtracted here is a negative 2, and negative 2 would be a. In x minus 7, a would be 7, and in x plus 8, a would be negative 8. Remember, it's the number being subtracted, and adding a number is the same as subtracting a negative. So let's go through a problem. We're going to go through this kind of slowly, writing down each step as we go and show you how to divide synthetically. So first of all, I'm going to write the coefficients of the dividend. So in my 3x squared minus 20x plus 12, remember we're just concerned with the 3, the negative 20, and the 12. Next, I'm going to write A in the upper left corner, and I'm going to put these little lines around it to kind of separate it from the rest of my problem. Since I have x minus 3 as my divisor, I'm going to use positive 3 as A and write it out front. Next, I'm going to create a horizontal line below the 3 coefficients. You might end up with lots more than 3 coefficients. That's okay. Just put a horizontal line below all of your coefficients. Make it long enough so that it'll fit. Write the first coefficient below the line. 3 was my first coefficient. I'm just going to copy it below that line. Now I'm going to multiply the first coefficient by A. In this case, I have a 3 times A, which was another 3. 3 times 3 gives me 9, and I'm going to write that number below my next coefficient. Then I'm going to add the numbers in my new column. Negative 20 plus 9 gives me negative 11, and my total is going to go underneath the line. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to multiply that new number by A. So negative 11 times 3 gives me negative 33, and I'm going to write that underneath my next coefficient over. I'm going to add that column together. 12 plus negative 33 gives me negative 21, and I'm going to write that below the line. I'm going to repeat those steps until all of my columns are complete. I'm going to draw a box around the sum on the very far right of my problem. The very last number I write, I'm going to put a box around it. The numbers below the line that I end up with are the coefficients in my new answer. So let me show you what that looks like. The number in the box is going to be my remainder, so I'm going to place that over my divisor in my answer. So the 3 is going to represent 3x, the minus 11 is going to be subtract 11, and the negative 21 is going to be minus 21 over my divisor, x minus 3. This is my new quotient. Don't worry, we'll go through another problem to show you a little more how that works, but this is kind of the basic. Let's look at something like 5x to the third plus 18x plus 8 and divide that by x plus 4. Notice how in my first polynomial I'm missing a term in here. I have a power of 3, 1, and 0, but I'm missing the term that has the power of 2. So wherever I'm missing a term, remember I'm going to put a coefficient of 0 there. I have to have everything from 3 to 0, or else synthetic division doesn't work. A in this case is going to be negative 4 because that's what's being subtracted in my divisor. X plus 4, remember, is the same as x subtract a negative 4. So A is negative 4. I'm going to put my line underneath all my coefficients, and I'm going to bring my first coefficient straight down under the line. Then I'm going to multiply that number by A. Negative 4 times 5 gives me negative 20, and I'm going to write that product underneath my next coefficient to the right. I'm going to add that column. 0 plus negative 20 gives me negative 20. And then I'm going to do the same thing over again. I'm going to multiply that negative 20 times A and write their product underneath the next coefficient to the right. I'm going to add the column together and get 98. Multiply 98 times A and I get negative 392. Add the column and I get negative 384. Put a box around the far right sum. That's my remainder. So just so that we're clear on how to write this as an answer, remember the one on the far right, the sum on the far right with a box around it, is my remainder. The term just to the left of that is going to be my constant. That's going to be my 0 power term. The term that's next to the left will be my power of 1 term. And I'm going to keep going up in power until I get to the end. Why is that important? Well, because then 5 will have an x to the power of 2. That negative 20 will have an x to the power of 1. The 98 will be my 0 power term, so that'll be my constant. And then negative 384, I'm going to put over my divisor, the x plus 4, to become my remainder. Make sure to write down any questions. Please go back and write down the examples if you haven't already. It would be a good idea to write down the steps to synthetic division. And I will see you next time in class.